Know that the IMF is in town. They've been in town towards the end of this month, and they've been having conversation, doing a review of the program that they've given us and the things that we are supposed to do. When the IMF comes to town, a review mission, exactly what are they here to do?
Thank you very much. The IMF gives you a loan to do a correction.
Okay.
And I think everybody knows when we say to do a correction that things are not, going well. Let's compare two types of loans. The IMF loan for what we call austerity, for doing corrections, which we have done. When people say we've done 17 programs, that's what we've normally done. When you have a problem, you call them, they come in, they give you a loan. Others at the World Bank and others come in, they also augment it. Development partners come in, they augment it, and then we correct. Yeah. The difficulty is that the correction is not sustained. So within, time you go back to the IMF. Okay, we'll find out how we try to avoid a sinking fund, stabilization fund. Those are very relevant from our homegrown policy. So compare this type of loan with the COVID loan. There was one episode affecting everybody. The whole world was getting the money, so we went in for it. The difference is that we got 1 billion, and then we also got SDR 1 billion, which is 2 billion to tackle COVID. Many countries got...
We got 2 billion from the IMF.
We got 1 billion for the COVID loan.
Okay.
But there was the SDR distribution, which the IMF did, which managed to have gone to Bank of Ghana. That was also roughly 1 billion.
Explain the SDR's part for us.
SDR is it's like you have a share in Radio Gold, and let's say that share is on the stock exchange. You buy Radio Gold shares, on the stock exchange, and then the shares are appreciating. Radio Gold management can decide that this is due to profit, we are doing well, so let us give some of the money back. It's like dividends. But this one is a special, payment that is made. And the special SDR means special drawing rights. That's the currency for the IMF. They have the way they calculate their own currency. Based on we use CD, US uses dollar. The European countries now use euro. So the IMF, World Bank, the African Development Bank, the multilateral institutions, as we call them, the development banks, they normally use SDR, which has a relationship, just like we can say 10 Ghana cedis is equal to $1. There's a relationship which is almost 1-to-1, between the SDR. But normally when they give it out, it's easier to explain it, in dollars. So we say that roughly we got that. Those monies, we received all of them, 1 billion at the go.
So the SDR is not money that you pay back?
Some of which you pay back, some you don't, because it's spiritually like your money. But if you don't restore it, it's a really special relationship. It's a bit complex. If you don't, restore it, it means that you're also reducing, your stake. It's like you can decide to, you're also reducing your stake. More. Because remember, it's an appreciation of your interest in the bank, which is the IMF. We are members of the IMF. So it's not straightforward as a loan. So let's just use the COVID loan to. Now, we got the COVID loan when the board approved. Because it's an emergency loan, that's why it's called rapid credit facility. It's a rapid loan. Virtually no conditionalities. Now IMF is giving us 3 billion, which is what we have normally got when we do IMF programs. IMF will not give you 3 billion up front. If IMF is giving us roughly 600, which is 1 billion, second year 600, I'm just approximating, which is another, 600. So approximately the 3 billion is spread. The disbursement, it's like you are building a house and you go, that you don't pay big interest on the whole amount. The bank will say, yes, I'll give you, let's say, 2 million to, maybe 350, to build your house. But you don't take all the 350 up front, because otherwise you'll be paying interest while the foundation is being done. So you take a bit to do foundation, you take a second disbursement to, when you have to bring the structure above, and then for roofing, internal. So you may take it in 3 or 4.
Okay.
That way you are spreading, you are not accumulating interest right from day one. So with the program that we have now, the difference is that, and the programs we have always had with the IMF, when you are tackling challenges, is they give you the money, and then it is, spread. Okay. Why does the bank or yourself not give you? So that the bank will send project officers to come and make sure that the concrete, specification you did. And so that's why banks have architects and the rest. They have technical people who are, they're in the field. So they'll come and make sure that the specification you gave them, you said, yes, it's your loan, it's your money you are going to pay, but if the building collapses, they won't get their money.
Okay.
In all probability. Okay. So the review missions, what the IMF is doing now, is similar to that.
Okay.
You say you are going to do a correction over 3 years. We are not going to give you all the money upfront to do. We will be coming periodically to make sure that you reach your goal.
Okay.
So let's take it that if our deficit, that is our revenue or income, which is lower than expenditure, is, let's say, 10% or 12%, but it should be at 5%.
Okay.
Nobody will expect you to reduce your expenditure. This is very important for the question, what we're discussing. We are doing well, now, yes. Nobody will expect you, to move from 10%, right, 12%, straight to 5%, which is in our Fiscal Responsibility Act. We say we want to do 5%. So if we are doing 12, we have diverged by 7%.
Okay.
So if we say that we want to force even at our own law, then we can say that by next year we should be back to 5%.
Okay.
But that means you cut expenditure so drastically, and it's difficult to raise income.
Okay.
That essential services and things will suffer. So the fund will say, okay, we understand. You are going to move, let's say, 8 percentage points, or 6 percentage points from, let's say, even 12 to 6. So every year, show us that you have reduced it by 2.
Okay.
Next by 2. Next by 2. Until you get to your 6%, which is 1% above the 5% that you fix for yourself. Right?
Okay.
Now, so how do they, before they make that disbursement, so they've given us some money already. Remember, once the board approves the program, they give you some money. Now, based on what is in what we call the letter of intent, signed by the governor and the Minister of Finance on behalf of government and the Ghanaian people, the IMF will be coming to do reviews. That's what we call the reviews. So they will do about 6 reviews, 5 reviews, before the 3 years.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you don't reduce the expenditure, this is the first review. If you are expected to reduce the expenditure and increase revenue so that your deficit will move from, say, 12 to 10 or 9.5, when they come, they will look at the measures you say you are going to take to achieve that goal. Because you can't raise revenue, you can't cut expenditure, everything in 1 year.
Okay.
So if they are satisfied, then they go to the board again, and then the board will approve. Remember, when we couldn't do the debt exchange before the board approved the program itself, it was France and China who were going to chair the committees who gave the assurance, that they think they can do a deal with Ghana. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even moved the first step.
Okay.
You remember there was that story coming? Yes. We wouldn't have moved the first step. Okay. So that is what it is. So it's like the project officer comes to your site and do an inspection. The fund of incomes review, and normally you can go as far as 5 reviews or 6 reviews over it. So for the, let's say the Mahama, program in 2015 with the MPP took over. Because it was 2015 going to 2016, we had barely done the first review, and we're in the second review. So the MPP actually completed the remaining 3 or so reviews. They extended it, by another year. And they took the money that would have come, because the money didn't come up front. That's what many people don't know. The money that would have come to the Mahama administration, if we had won and continued with it, actually went to the MPP. In addition to 3 oil fields, and all that, yes. So if they are not satisfied, then they'll have to go to the board. You have to give the reasons why you couldn't make the 2%, which you promised. And then if they are, then the staff will evaluate it. Their management at Africa department will also evaluate it. And then when the report goes, they prepare their report, to the board. They can say, okay, there are 6 conditions that had to be met. You see where the word comes in. There are 6 conditions which were specified to be met by the time of the first review. Ghana was able to meet only 2. They are asking that even though they couldn't meet all the 6, they've met 4, which is the majority. So they've made progress, only we haven't been able to achieve. And we believe that before we come and do the next review, together with that, they will be able to do it. And the board will, so our executive director, who represents us, who is in all probability is here, observing, or our staff, who are in the IMF office in Washington, they will, prepare a report and things for the director. And the director will go and convince his colleagues, the executive director, that we think that Ghana can make it. So even though they didn't make 6, they made 4. If you're able to make the 6, all the better. Then it's only upon that the board will approve that the next tranche, as they call it, should be released to you.
Okay. So whether or not we get the next tranche depends on how well we do with this review.
Whether or not we get any tranche will depend on the reviews. That's a constant. A review of the conditionalities. That's where conditionalities come in. So if you say that we are going to slow down, compensation is one of the big issues. So we are going to slow down, not stop. And this is a you remember during our time, they said, we said we were going to, remove people from the payroll and we're going to do all this. The same condition is back. So again, what was the difference?
We are back to the payroll
issue. Back to the payroll issue. Because remember, compensation and interest. We were analyzing it for ourselves before. We discussed it here. Compensation, which is the wages, and interest alone, was taking all our revenue. So if you need to trim expenditure, you have to do something about compensation. But you don't want to send civil servants. So normally, what has been put in conditions from time immemorial is that don't use, government is saying, I'm not going to use the public sector only to generate jobs. I'm not going to use the public sector payroll. That's the easiest route, because you can direct, Ministry of Health to take on more staff. You can direct, to take on more. So we decided to do the structural. So you understand our move towards infrastructure, because, you do the attrition, and the way we were doing the attrition, let me explain that first, is that if people retire and there is no urgent necessity, then the institution from which they retire does not recruit.
Okay.
All right.
That was how you approached it?
Yes.
Okay.
If somebody resigns. No, that's how governments have been approaching it. That's how it's going to be approached now.
Okay.
So you see NAPCO, moved off the payroll and all that, and yes, pay their compensation and others. Because remember, in all probability, the civil service can take only around 550,000, maximum 600,000. And all the agencies on the budget.
Okay.
If you increase this, from 500 to 750, you are creating jobs.
Okay.
But that's the reason why your compensation and interest only, is taking away all the, So you better find other ways of creating jobs to augment. Because the civil service will always take, new, because if the economy expands, the economy before 3 oil fields is not the same as the economy. And the work of the government itself is increasing. So yes, you take some, civil servants, because maybe you needed, as I said, 500,000, but because of workload in, say, Ministry of Energy, because now petroleum has come on board and whatever, you are going to add, some to that. But then you have to be very careful that you are not taking on too many, because wages is already a problem.
Okay.
But in the past years, we've done that attrition, unemployment continues. But the more sustainable way of creating jobs is infrastructure.
Okay. So
infrastructure which will be sustained. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
We had Terminal 1, Terminal 2. The employment being created by Terminal 3 is more than Terminal 1 and 2 put together.
Okay.
We had Terminal Port expansion. We had ships that will be lining up in the night, those who are on the beach. It's a spectacle. You see, because they put on the lights are clear, you see the lineup, of ships that are waiting in line to come and discharge. It's wasteful. And then they may divert next time to Lome or to somewhere close by Abidjan. If you do the port expansion that we are doing, both at Tema and Takoradi, you reduce, the line. It means that the old harbor has overgrown, and Ghana becoming a hub, right, where goods are coming in for Ghana itself, for the Sahel, and some of the people who even want to take it to Togo, because Togo hasn't expanded, Abidjan hasn't expanded, would use Accra and then go by road and whatever, which is why the Kosovo Rail is being done, and the dream of our former far-looking president in Nkrumah to batch goods on the water. So when they come, they discharge, then you batch to make it faster. So you save your routes and other, then you connect, right? So you begin to look at infrastructure. That's why the Mama administration was intent on that infrastructure. So you can imagine, again, the port expansion, the number of employment that you create. So you don't create employment only, NAPCO style, by just adding people to the public sector payroll.
Okay.
And that's more sustainable. And that's how you win yourself of the fund program. That's how you don't get into trouble again with youth in the streets and not having jobs. But it takes time for infrastructure to, and then the version of e-schools, for example, would have increased teachers, whatever there's need for hospitals, clinics, in the district. So districts, we investing in all of those, it creates jobs.
Okay.
It's a quantification, which is not obvious. So it creates jobs. So you can see, and then the cocoa roads and the rest, the roads are needed. And when you open up the rural areas, food will not rot. And food will be processed. And usually we are in a rainy season, inflation is looking good now, but we'll go to the dry season. Then we need forex to import even rice to do this, because we haven't got storage and things and others. So on the fiscal side, that's the stabilization fund and things that you are talking about. But you find more sustainable ways of it. If you get the rural roads done, the rice mills, the Mama administration was rehabilitating them and all of those things, then you are expanding the economy.
Okay.
And when you expand, it brings more jobs, alternative jobs, e-schools, who are doing the construction. It's not just those doing the Wala to Wala Sa. Yes, they also need a job. Mind you, job creation is the whole line. But you have people from USC, architects and whatever, who will be, because you are expanding, right? When you are finished with the construction, then we must learn maintenance. That's why we're doing road resurfacing and the rest. In the cocoa growing area, the rainy season and all that. So then, because you've built the roads, you put something aside for resurfacing and, every time, it means that annually, the people who did the construction in the local area will be the ones who will be doing the resurfacing, more sustainable. You don't wait for the road to deteriorate, right? So let's come back to IMF. So I'm talking about strategies, some of the strategies, Mama's strategies, which, and Mills Mama to move things away so that we can become, dependent on ourselves. But so the basic thing that staff are coming to do now is that we have specified things that we want to do. Between when the program was signed and it was to be November, it's been moved, forward to September. I guess it's, because the situation was getting dire, and then also to probably have an input before the budget.
Okay.
You got to remember the budget is underway. So September, October, November.
Okay.
We are reading the budget. You know, when they come in December, Parliament is already reviewing the budget and whatever. And so if they get the inputs, they get some of the budget inputs and the rest, you know, then, in all probability, their second, you know, review will be more effective because they would have had all this string of input. So if they are giving an assurance that something can be done now and whatever, they have a firm basis for saying, yeah, it cannot be done, but it has provision has been made in the budget or in whatever. You know, by the time we do the next review, which is next year, then things will be, and we should be taking note, we should be following, because just like they inherited our program, it was President Mama who decided that it should overlap the election year. Their program is also going to overlap the election year. The difference is that, yes, with the front loading, we got more money upfront after the first review, but they are going to get more money. By the time they leave office, the third review, they would have taken about 2/3 of the money. The 3 billion.
2/3 of the
about
3 billion.
Of the 2 billion.
Before the election.
Exactly. And most of the heavy lifting, if you look at the program,
will be done after the election.
After the elections, yes.
Oh. But first, let's come to what the IMF is coming to. So the conditions that we're supposed to meet. Are we clear in our minds as to what we are supposed to achieve?
Yeah, we agree with them. We agreed with them already. How do I say it? We had agreed with them on what we want to do, you know, during the first review. You know, because they won't spring a surprise on you.
Okay.
You know, the fund is yes. So I had a list somewhere. Okay, maybe during the break I'll look for it,
okay,
and then we can go through. You know, yes. So we had agreed on a number of items that had to be done, and there are qualitative things you want to do, like technical assistance to improve GRA collection, which will ultimately bring in training and other things. Look at expenditure management and all those. You know, yes, that's the qualitative aspect. The quantitative is what I said earlier on. We want to move the deficit, which is too high, from 12 to 10 to 8, and then maybe to 6 or 5 within the program period. So maybe by the time they leave office, the ideal is 5%.
Okay.
By the time they leave office, the next administration come in, they would have been maybe at most around 8%. So you have the task of, you know, reaching, you know, the ultimate. Yeah. So basically, that is what you know the one can say, and it's the same for. It's going to be the same, you know, for the other two, you know. The remaining. Some of the things we have to do are indicative.
Okay.
Some of them are structural. For example, under tax policy, support the authorities to identify tax policy measures to increase domestic resource mobilization. Okay. We all know it. We say that we are not collecting. Okay. It has been there for years. So what are the structural measures that you have to put in place? Okay. You know, ahead of our program, we put in place ICOMS, single window, and for customs. And we're going to do the domestic. Now, the government is being required to do the ITAX, the very thing that was left. Expenditure was a headache. One reason expenditure is a headache is not just the amount of contracts that we award. Yes. But also, it's not just the amount, the amount of number of contracts that you award, but you have the inflation, you know, and some payments being made outside the budget, footnote and the rest. So we started gift list. So that government need to have a firm control, you know, of its expenditure. Okay. It's like the accountant here. Senna is the one who is doing all the talking and every, you know, but I'm sure sometimes you get frustrated when you go to with your voucher and you need, you know, some tea for people who come and say, oh, this time it's rough, our budget is, you know, so instead of, you know, giving me, you know, 3 cups or something, if I'm a coffee addict and so I come early, you know, you may find nice ways of saying, oh, today something is wrong, you know, 1 cup. You are doing austerity, right?
Yes.
Yes. You know, and when government does austerity, many businesses do austerity because the cost of borrowing is high. We are dependent on the T-bills and other things, and it's competing with private sector. You know, so the government's austerity hits And so you see, after the NPC, you heard Chamber of Commerce coming out, AGI coming out, and say, yeah, we may be doing well, but, and that is the main thing which, I want to also say that, you see, the period 3 years ahead. In 3 years, a lot can happen to an economy.
Okay.
So we shouldn't be too excited. Inflation at 40%. You want to bring it down to single digits, right? It's a long ride. So the fact that it has dropped from, 42 to 40 and then to 39, the jump is extraordinary, right? Language is also very important. Oh, DD, we did well. We have saved, 2 billion. How did you save the 2 billion? You saved the 2 billion by not paying, debt that is due to Ghanaian citizens. So how do you call it a success? If this were the way you can achieve success, by taking savings of, of citizens who have put their money in government bonds, and you are not paying them on due date, and you are promising to pay them later, you've deferred interest payment, principal, and whatever. And yes, you save because the payments the savings is what you should have paid them now is a savings to government to help reduce, to improve things. They are helping to improve things. It's not something, to say we have achieved so much success, we've saved so much, No, you are deferring the payment to another government by not paying now. And the truth is that we've defaulted. That is the reality. Right? We are unable to borrow, so we are dependent on only T-bills. So I'm not saying that, you achieve some success. Definitely. That's why the thing is programmed. Right? But it will take time, and understand anxiety to show that we are making progress, but a bit circumspection, is also required. Yeah.
Well, so you talk about the first one is revenue.
Yeah, the first one. These are these are the major goals.
Okay.
But then when you go to the annual, you break it.
Okay.
Because you can't do this in
Okay.
So let's look at some of the major things that we say
we will do. Okay.
So on tax policy, we would build capacity, and that's what I read. Support, the authorities' efforts. The fund has 2 sides, 2 or more sides.
Okay.
There are those who provide technical assistance. For example, when I was, at the fund, I was in the Fiscal Affairs Department.
Okay.
I was in the African Department. They are the ones who do the mission. But when they come with people who are tax specialists, expenditure managers, central banking. We say there's a supervisor. It's probably come from the, monetary and capital markets, division of the fund. So they come in. They also come and they provide the assistance. Okay. So when we're doing, the GRA, for examples, let's give specific examples. Some of them we did even before we went to the program.
Okay.
We created GRA to make sure that there is a solid institution.
Okay.
One, that's the Commissioner General who will be held accountable to give him independence, like the central bank governor, over operations. Government can do the policy, but he has to have powers to do the operations. Because when he's doing compliance, you, the minister, should be paying taxes. If you don't pay, he should be able to query you, of course, in a polite way. Even the president, also has to pay. And it should be, when it comes to that, it's about citizen paying. So, number one, citizen has to show the example, for others. Okay. Then when it comes to revenue administration, that's the policy administration, strengthen revenue administration to increase the compliance, help the authorities prepare, their medium-term, revenue strategy. Okay. There was a workshop when we were talking about this. The IMF already has a framework for raising revenue in the medium term. So now we take this and we adapt it, and it's multi-year. It will take about 3 years or 4 years, so over the program period or more, to do just like giftness. We started, we didn't, complete. We'll come to that. Okay, so this is the sort of support they will give. How are we going to get it? How are development partners coming in to help? Okay. Where did this stop? For example, so the revenue administration, we combined, customs. Sorry, we combined IRS and VAT service, right? So somebody was doing VAT all the time, another was doing only income tax. Now you've put them together. The guy was doing only income tax must learn VAT, and the one doing VAT must learn, income tax. So they provide support to do that, right? Is this delayed? Probably. Okay, then the public financial management, which is one of the key areas. The problem we have with exchange rate depreciation, inflation, the deficit financing is because Bank of Ghana was financing the budget.
Okay.
So what do we have, to do that? There was a zero financing. The governor was talking about it, that they've not given any financing to government. But we have always had a reservation that at least in this period, the 5% we must be allowed. That's what our law says, right? So it says, help the authorities undertake a stock take of payables and design a clearance strategy. This is our contract database. This is what the MBB we started creating. And I do for when I was a deputy. And then we created a database which was to be part of the gift list.
Okay.
This is a figure that was taken and said that we had left arrears. We were doing something which was never done. And then they did the offset. You remember we spoke about the offset, right? Now they have published, the desktop, because we're going to the IMF, which was never published from 2017 after they used it against us. They published in 2021, and we have a contract, data from the database 77 billion. It increased from 13 billion to 77 billion. The work that has been completed is about 53 billion payment of someone. So you see the astronomical figures. These were some of the things that were being shown as footnotes. IPP debt, for which there was SNA, that should be paid, and all that. So now we are going to be doing, SNA had enhanced road levy. So some of the initiatives are coming back, right? And anybody can verify it. You can have time to look at it. And then provide TA on fiscal rule and fiscal council. They had this fiscal council, if you remember, it was created. If it was working, we wouldn't have, the deficits at a high level and being financed by Bank of Ghana and all that. So the fund is bringing that, back. Then now let's go to monitoring, and exchange rate. That is, the exchange rate is a cost of a cedi. Provide TA to Bank of Ghana, on their balance sheet, management of their balance sheet, and help the authorities assess, the impact of the domestic debt restructuring. Okay. Develop. So that's the assessment which we are trumpeting as a success. If it was so successful, right, in the real sense of the word, and you make so much gain, then pay those who have suffered the haircut. You see, otherwise you'll be giving the haircut back to them and you've not done anything. Right, this is what I'm talking about, the modesty and whatever, yes. So, and then develop a strategy to ensure adequate capacity, capitalization and capacity, so when you hear the central bank saying the banks need to recapitalize, they need to do that, something we've always done, it's there, right? So what are the milestones by review 1, review 2, review 3 for you to ultimately achieve this? There's 2 more. There's governance. That is governance and corruption, diagnostic assessment. Okay, so this is, we all know, and then statistics, TA on balance of payment compilation, and resolve this, between the for BOG and maybe the Ministry of Finance. So, and then the TA on fiscal, okay, we've read that already. Elsewhere, you will see that they are very specific in terms of, say, restoration of giftness, restoration of the tax program, restoration of all those things. So it means, it only simply tells us that when we suspend these initiatives, which is why we had a homegrown policy, you'll come back to it under an IMF program.
Yeah. I'll take a break. When I come back, I'll come back to all, because everything you just read reminds me of some of the things we were talking about when we were finance minister. How come we are coming back to try to do the same things that you were trying to resolve before you left power? Well, we'll be back. I found a list of things.
I have some of them, yes.
How many are we supposed to achieve?
Okay, we'll run through some. They were supposed, we have we have prior actions, what we met to go to the board for approval. Then you have the structural benchmarks. What you have to do by end June. There are 3, end September, another 4, and then end December. Since the review was pushed forward, they wouldn't expect us to have fully completed. We are in September. But we should be making substantive progress, because if they are coming in November and we are getting to the end of September, we ought to have been reaching these targets.
Getting closer to achieving those targets.
So maybe by the time they go to board. So maybe we can run through the prior actions. We knew them. We discussed some of them. Enact legislation, and or executive order necessary to achieve the 2023 fiscal objectives. Implement an upfront weighted average, blah, blah, blah. There were 5 of them. So those we've gone to the board. So now let's focus on. So for the June things we were supposed to have done by June, finalize the comprehensive stock take of payables accumulated by all MDAs, design a payable clearance plan, and lay out a structural reform plan. Now, the objective is to get clarity on the current situation regarding stock of payables and the central government. This is what I was addressing. This is the contract database we created, which was distorted and everything, but luckily it was not stopped because it was a structural measure. So the good thing is that since the database is there, in fact, going into the fund program, the announcement in 2022, they released the 2021, and that's the 77 billion. Now they've released 2022, so in all probability, and what the curious thing there is that you see, if you go to the fund, the sustainability analysis, you see that a certain amount of those arrears were added, to debt for so. That could be the IPP debts and things, arrears that should have been cleared under ESLA, now being created into the debt exchange.
Okay, so the contract database was supposed to have captured contracts that government had.
Yes, it was capturing contracts. In fact, we had attained about, I would say maybe 97 to 98%.
Oh, so it was work in progress before you left?
It was work. It was, in fact, it was used in the 2017 budget without attribution, but we were going to introduce for the first time. And then so it had total contracts awarded, the addition to the contract since it was awarded, of the contract, the amount of work in progress, which is being done. And then of the work being done, how much has been completed and certified, or how much has been completed and not certified. So if you take roads, this is what will be at the Ministry of Roads and Highways. Then of the certified, it is moved to Ministry of Finance for payment. Because it's been certified. And so then you had other columns which will tell you amount certified, right, known, right, and then sent to controller for payment, but in Ministry of Finance, not paid. From controller, what has gone to Bank of Ghana for payment and what, not paid. We didn't have this in the past. So you understand how you can do a budget and all of a sudden, ministries think I have money, right? There's a new budget. And then they go and award contracts without recourse to the pipeline. So we're going to use this as part of the medium-term strategy. So you heard President Mahama when he's talking about pipeline, being faithful to the pipeline and paying irrespective of which president. This is what was initiated and to be implemented. Now this is coming back. We didn't hear of it until 2021. Okay, so that is it. Then you have finalized a strategy to strengthen, the financial sector and rebuild financial institution buffers in collaboration with the fund. Here, the domestic debt exchange. This is where it comes from. So there are things we were supposed to have done at the end of June. We didn't. Remember, we are just completing the domestic debt exchange. So it means that unless we are able to say concretely, and now the minister is saying that we've completed it, yes, there's a delay, but we may have achieved the domestic debt exchange, yes. So we can report positive. And then rebuilding financial sector buffers and the rest. You had, World Bank and others coming in to help restore. Then the third thing we're supposed to do is publish updated energy sector recovery plan.
Updated energy sector recovery.
You know the word, updated.
Yeah.
So there was the one that was aborted.
Okay.
PDS and all that. That's what we're talking about now.
Okay.
So a new plan is to come out after the extra fair school not being used and other things is re-emerging.
Okay.
Right. So this is also an update. And then publish a strategy after cabinet approval to streamline statutory funds. The strategy should include, key findings, assessments, and whatever, right? And statutory funds are GET Fund, NHIL, DACF, and all those, of course, we collateralize, the GET Fund, DACI, and all that, we place caps, so the money is not going, DACF, no, all the money is going and all. So some work should be done, to rationalize, this. So there should be a plan. It's only calling for a plan.
Okay.
Not that it should be, it has implemented. You see why I'm saying that, you need, for the fund, you need strategies, so 1 year on, depending on what comes up for the second reviewing, we are only preparing strategies for somebody to be implemented, a new administration. Then approve, publish a medium-term revenue strategy approved by Parliament that is consistent with the agreed fiscal adjustment under the program, delivers permanent non-oil public increase, at least 1.5% of GDP. You see what I was talking about? If you want to reduce your deficit, you can't do it by 5% immediately. So it's saying that from the time of the agreement and what government said it was doing, we expect that at least, GI revenue or total revenue should have increased, by 1.1 by now.
Okay.
Are we achieving it? The Minister of Finance is saying that we are achieving some of these targets. Approved plans of all banks negotiated during the previous quarters to rebuild capital buffers and initiate corrective, So this again, the recapitalization and the other things, the governor was saying we are making progress on some of these things. Introduce an indexation mechanism of the benefits under the livelihood empowerment, against poverty, LEAP. This is something from I believe it was the Kufuor era, all the way, which every administration keeps strengthening. And it has become the replacement for PAMSCAD, HIPIC, MDR, and yes. And then, but this is targeted towards a specific sector. So there must be other complementary ones, enlarged by us. Because LEAP is, usually paid to retirees and CAP and others, but you also have, even at the basic school schemes, fee-free and others for, those are all, intervened. And then operationalize the integrated tax administration system by completing procurement of the system.
Okay.
We have done the customs bit. This is a domestic one. And we're going to do the modernization phase 2, which has 7 years on. We are back. And then data migration from other portals, including EVAT and GITMIS. There was no GITMIS, but it came. This is just a point on GITMIS. And then you have appraisal of current situation and verification of requirements, data check. Implementation of the functionality of VAT.
Okay.
We have so many levies, which were brought under VAT during the pre-Kumipeku era. And going into, right, so rationalize the key. You look at what you see that they are touching on the key tax, instruments. Implementation of the functionality of VAT, implementation of the functionality of the corporate income tax, implementation of the functionality of personal income tax. The two that are left here, which are the solid ones, are, customs duty, and then excise duty. These are the pillars. Anything else is secondary.
Okay.
Right. You can introduce so many levies, you are not likely to be increasing. But these are December measures. This one, and then the last one, just listen, which is expand GIFMIS infrastructure to 265 IGF related institutions with all the available functionalities.
Okay.
GIFMIS. We started it. This issue came up for debate for example, the investees and the rest, whether now is we are talking about IGF because some progress has been made with them. Anybody on a budget, including IGF funds that are being used, and others should be part of the gift miss. This should have been done, a long time ago. This is something for, and then you have Hyperon and others, which some have been completed, in all fairness, by the Ministry of Finance. Okay. But we haven't moved to the integrated, to make it solid so that everything will be covered. And we still talk about off budget. So I think that, the important thing is these are things which, some of which were initiated, far back by other administrations, which should have been continued. And now they are part of, a fund program. You can see the familiar names that we've mentioned for some of these things.
Does that not speak to retrogression? That actually we are taking, like, every time we take one step forward, 2 steps back, and have to take the same steps. We keep taking the same steps over and over
That
again.
is why our reforms will be sustainable. And that is why President Mahama is saying, look, we're not going to come and then just, yes, we have for example, youth schools that were stopped and other hospital projects and the rest, but the current government stopped. This also started, projects. So we look at all of them, and we have to stop the habit of, it's only one budget revenue, and the contract database is there. It's not full, 77 billion, of contracts in the pipeline. Of course, 24 billion or so is paid. Left with about 53 billion. Some at near completion, and the rest are going to add on. We all know the roads which are not completed. We know all this. So I think we must begin to look at some of the pronouncements in there. So again, if you look at our dispensation, it means that we've been on top of some of this, and hopefully we can. It's about sustainability. If you put all this in a database, right, then it means that you are going to focus on them. It doesn't mean you are not going to do new contracts. You do new and urgent contracts, but finish what is in the pipeline. That's the idea. Yeah.
Well, that's it. So what's your judgment on, I know you've been listening to them saying that we have done what was required of us.
That is up to September.
Doing, yes.
And you can see many of these things are achievable, as I was saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to you, most of the things that the IMF will be checking on are achievable.
Oh, yeah, they're mostly achievable. Those are the things that I was reading. And usually it's to prepare a strategy, prepare a plan. The plans used to, for example, let's take 2. Publish the updated energy sector recovery plan. We had one with the World Bank, which was the basis for, the waterfall, whether, take or pay and whatever. We started moving. Yeah, since we're being politicized, we are back to, preparing a plan. Then the other one, which are 2 other ones, the medium-term revenue strategy. I told you, it started with, the revenue reforms. Professor Mills was a commissioner of, so that was the first thing. Created, GRA, merged IRS, and VAT service, which was a trend, that was going, taking place. Tackle electronic, ICOMs, which was part of GCNet and all those things, and then move on, to tackle. In fact, we split the offices into large, medium, and small taxpayer offices, so that right now they've been changed back into taxpayer service. The important is that there's some sustainability. So you see, some of these things have historical precedence. And when you talk about energy plan, again, for example, in fairness, that also includes, for example, how are we going to use the oil revenue? Because that's the energy sector. You remember the PRMA, the construction work that was being done under President Kufuor, which became, the PRMA, and how we were to use the revenue for stabilization, how we were to use the revenue, part of the heritage fund, how we were going to use, many of these things now depleted. And we find ourselves, if we get a new crisis, there are no buffers. Okay. Right. But I noticed from the NPC statement that we are back to defining reserves. Okay. Which, by the way, if you read between the lines, it's just 1 month of reserves. If you take away the oil, the Ghana funds, that's what you call the heritage fund, and the balance of the stabilization fund, which is down to only 100 million anyway, because the cap, was never, replaced, so that it could grow, right? So anytime we say, oh, we have 3 months, we didn't used to include the oil reserves. Now at least the NPC statement is making a distinction again. Yeah.
Well, you talk about the updated energy plan, and I guess you keep hearing them then talking about the fact that you at some point had to step in additional responsibility for the power ministry because the minister had made a promise
resigned,
and had to resign.
Yeah, my good friend.
Yes. So how does it sound to you when you hear even the World Bank, those in government, then seek to say that it was the arrangements in place that are creating difficulties? In fact, they blame payments from the power sector, and they talk about take or pay as one of the reasons they are here. And
the last two contracts we took to Parliament were not take or pay. We didn't do because we had gas.
Okay.
The LNG projects, we didn't do them. It was the current government that did them. It's bigger than just, take or pay. We circulated years back, and they keep coming back to it. A letter which Honorable Gina Paul signed on my behalf as Power Minister, to begin negotiations, with the IPPs. We got a term sheet for 600 million, which was part of, ESLA, to pay the IPPs. It was never paid. It was never, we collateralized the ESLA, but we rather use the money for something else. Such that because I say something else, because if it had been paid, we wouldn't be talking about those debts now. And why are you, blaming President Mahama? Even if the structure was in place, the money was there to pay the debt. So even take for granted, the take or pay is something that goes back from a long time, right? That was a model, right? We did we changed the basis to OCTP, futures market terms, those were the agreements that we sent to Parliament, which that is the last two agreements.
Okay.
But anytime you bring this, the I don't want to say, noise, but the misconception continues to be created because it's popular to always say somebody else blame it. I find unfortunate, because these were information that are available, to the World Bank, because we discussed them as part of the energy plan, including the waterfall, which we were going to use after the VRA. We used extra to negotiate the VRA debt. VRA was to continue, with the dollars that they were using to create the waterfall, for, payment of the, the letter of credit established by the commercial banks until, the PSP, which became PDS, will come on stream, right? And strengthen ECG, because the weakness was the inability of ECG, including the imported, prepaid meters and the rest. So who stole all of this? Right. Yes, I know, because as you said, and I work with Honorable Bois, on this. And at the point we brought all the CEOs, remember Dr. President, if you heard Mr. President, remember he was talking about a certain meeting where we were going on and whatever, and he had to ask all of us to go to some place to go and get an agreement and come back to him, because he started from Flagstaff House, it was on. So he said, go and do a retreat. And we got advice. In fact, we got advice from the World Bank. But the strategy was from the World Bank. Yes, one is not saying that everything is, was done, to perfection or whatever, but, we had these things. They were in the handing over notes, and everything that was handed over. So I think that at appropriate time, I think that it's diplomacy. So that you have to, open a dialogue, with the World Bank, to have these discussions to get a perspective right, because some of the documents are still available. I had one of the web, I think I must have left it in the car, the World Bank documents, which we dealt with them in 2015, which led to they gave us two guarantees. One is the one we used to refinance, the bonds that we issued for single spine and the rest, the 2015 bond, which we virtually defaulted, which means that if we default, because the World Bank provided a guarantee, the World Bank is the one who has to pay. Right? And so you can imagine, how can you go back to the World Bank? for yes, and we did a refinancing, and we promised that we'll set up the sinking fund. You refinance. Okay, let me explain what happened when we issued the bonds, right? When we issued the bonds for single span, and it was becoming unsustainable. If you remember, we decided to rather spread it over 3 years. So we got this 1 billion for the World Bank together with other, like the bond situation we have now. But instead of haircut, what we did was we went to the World Bank, got a guarantee, we got the money. That's the bond we did at 10.2%. So that should tell you the condition at which we were to do the bond at 10.2, which the current administration said was, unheard of. Now we promised that we would pay the money through the sinking fund over 10 to 15 years. Right? And we demonstrated that it's possible, to clear all those, what happened to it, including the first sovereign bond that we did, the 2007. We used 336 million or 35 million of our own money. The balance is from the sinking fund, 200 million, which the MPP used to pay off the balance, but stopped the sinking fund. After using the balance in it, stopped it. So how do you come back to blame President Mahama for something that had been stretched out, which was to be paid? And the energy sector, was fully covered. I mean, granted, even if we take responsibility for those, those contracts at PP, we are saying that at a point in time, and to enable us to use the gas and utilize properly, ESLA was calculated to the letter, with the same opposition at the time, now in government, to the penny, 2.2 billion. You can Google. I think I read that out to you some time ago. 2.2 billion US dollars to the penny. So it should have been cleared in 3 to 5 years. As we speak, ESLA has brought in almost 40 billion, and we've not been able to settle contractors, and what happened? And then ESLA is supposed to bring in over 60 billion, 63 billion by 2026. And yes, sir, despite the revenue, these revenue flows, we have added ESLA to DDE. So where did the money go?
Yeah, there's a lot I would actually like to, and I think all this will take some time because I don't know if you read your successor's article he wrote in support of the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Did you go through it?
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah. There's a portion that I've read to a couple of your communicators, but it's better read to you because this falls directly under you. He says, Governor Addison, just like me, has faced major economic hurdles since 2017, inheriting a derailed IMF program.
Who concluded that IMF program?
He said they inherited a derailed IMF program.
We didn't derail it. We did a first review. We can do a program on it. I'll bring, the report of the first review that we did and the second review, which they took over. Then we can read, if it was derailed. They completed it, took the money. They completed that project. That's what I was explaining from the beginning. So we can do a program on it, and I'll bring the reviews, right? And some of the things that were in there, right? We are talking about them today. I was just talking about gifts, talking about, So let's do a separate program on it.
Yes, and because I think some of the things, even though the way he mentions them...
If it was derailed, let me ask another question. If it was derailed, what credits were they taking for fiscal consolidation in 2017, 2018, 2019 before, the figures were revised? Remember, the IMF program ended in 2018. Did they tell, Ghanaians that, conditions under the program were derailed because of... Were they not taking credit? And were we not writing and saying that you were doing footnotes, you were doing, pushing bailout costs and others? Was derailed. Were you deceiving Ghanaians then?
I see.
Why was it not so easy to tell Ghanaians that the IMF program, handed over to us at the time were derailed? But he kept telling Ghanaians that you are doing consolidation until 2020.
Honorable, like you said, I think I agree that we have to spend some time on this because they also talk about ethically strained financial industry from our predecessors. That's the inherited and ethically strained financial industry from you. But
Where is Esla? Let me give you one figure. Just a moment. The government keeps saying that we spent about 14 billion, sometimes 20 billion or whatever, to took a loan to save the financial sector. What happened to Esla? Because we demonstrated. Luckily, you see, we did things. We brought VRA to the table. I was talking about VRA. VRA was sitting here. The banks were sitting there, represented by the Bankers Association. And we told VRA, if you went to the banks to borrow, right, we're not giving the money to you. We're giving the extra money to the banks to settle your liability. And then you continue the repayment anyway, right, which would have supported, the gas, production. Right. So this is how we use ESLA. They should tell us how they use ESLA after the collateralization. And so how do you say, where's the ethics? Is the ethics with somebody, who said, I'm taking your money, taxpayer, I'm going to use it to settle debts? Or the ethics is with somebody who collateralized that revenue and never applied it, and today it is part of debt exchange. Where's the ethics?
Honorable, like you said, we have to. I don't know if we can agree to do this program if you're still within in country.
I'm around, yes.
Yes. So we'll spend some time because my time is over. I have to make way for the next.
I appreciate that.
For the next program. But did you say that Dr. Bawumia should put his hands into his pocket, bring out the questions that he put together for Vice President, the late Vice President, Mr. Atta, and just answer them?
I was asked a simple question. That he said he would give President Mahama in particular a showdown. He's the only person who can give him a showdown. And I said there was a criteria, for that showdown. Okay. And it involves taking the 170 questions. I have them.
Oh.
And answering. Yes, I have.
I see.
It isn't that, and we lack the time. But when the late Vice President was saying, most of the things are a listing of, projects that they envisage is there. So we can cover them. So I said, pull them out first.
We'll spend time and talk about these issues. But thank you. Thank you very much for making it.
We promise the audience questions and answers. So we'll come back.
Our next segment, what we will do is also give you the opportunity to ask him any question you want to ask him. Any question on any issue you want to ask him. I know a lot of you have been looking for an opportunity to ask him a question for so long. So the next, if we have the opportunity, would give you that opportunity to also ask some questions.
Thank you very much. We ended this note on ethics, just as we ended the last one on questions.
But if it has to do with your eyesight, let me remind you that the place you need to go to is Third Eye Care and Vision Center. Your eyesight, persistent headaches. If you need a new pair of glasses or lenses, speak to Third Eye Care and Vision Center. If you're also been referred by the DVLA as a new driver, you are looking for a license, they say you should go and do an eye examination and bring the report before they give you the license, go to Third Eye Care and Vision Center. You can find them at Northreach. They are on the premises of Sunny FM, Airport Residential Area. They are opposite the Mirage Residence, close to Association International School. They are open from Mondays to Fridays from 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. So today's a Wednesday. They're already open. They'll be open to 7:30 p.m. both branches. Give them a call on 024 59 38 389 or 054 32 87 008. It's important. And also, don't forget, we are proud to have Savannah Paint as one of our partners on the Gold Morning Conversation. I am Sana Numbo. We are back tomorrow with another edition of the show. Facebook Live was by Alaska Bishop, produced by Eric Boatim, Patrick Asford Boidu, and of course a big thank you to Lawyer. A good morning to Blessose and Fina, and also Madame Eugenia Saki, and a happy birthday to Joyce Kwebutonye. Belated happy birthday to Commodore Steve Obimpe. Commodore Steve Obimpe celebrated his 82nd birthday yesterday.
One station. Accra 2022, 23, 24.